All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about the Knights Templar, but probably not in the way you're used to. We're going to peel back all those myths and legends to find a story that's, well, way more complex and, honestly, way more fascinating.
So when you think Knight Templar, what comes to mind? Probably this, right? A huge, heavily armored, totally unstoppable warrior monk, basically a walking tank for the Christian West, just slicing his way through the Holy Land.
Okay, but what if that whole image, that entire European way of fighting, was completely wrong for the place they were trying to conquer? What if it was actually a death sentence? And what if their only path to survival wasn't about being stronger, but about becoming a lot more like their enemies?
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. We'll start with the myth of the knight, then look at the new kind of war they faced. We'll see how they built an empire, how they had to rethink everything down to health and hygiene, the strange friendships they formed, and finally, the ultimate price they paid for changing so much.
So it all kicks off with this massive clash. You've got these European knights kitted out in all this heavy armor, trained for these short, brutal battles on the nice green fields of France. And then, bam! They're dropped into the huge, hot, dry landscapes of Anatolia and the Levant. They weren't built for this world. At all. And that brings us to their first huge problem, the fighting itself. The Templars had this one big move, the shock charge. Basically, all the heavy cavalry charging in one massive, thundering wave. But against the Turkish horse archers, it was a total disaster. The Turks were fast. They'd just melt away into the desert and then shower the knights with arrows from a safe distance. And, I mean, you can really see the problem here. The Frankish knight is a walking fortress, right? He's got heavy chainmail, a massive horse built for power, not speed, and this big lance for one single powerful punch. But his opponents? They were skirmishers. Light armor, super fast horses, and these incredible composite bows that could hit you from way off. It was literally like trying to fight a squadron of fighter jets with a column of tanks.
So what do you do? How do you solve a problem like that? Well, their solution was pretty radical for the time. They basically stopped trying to just steamroll their enemy and started to be their enemy. They actually started recruiting and training their own light cavalry units, the Turcopole. They were literally fighting fire with fire, using the exact same tactics that were kicking their butts.
And this wasn't just some temporary fix, a battlefield improvisation. This went deep into their organization. The Templars created a permanent, high-ranking officer position, the Turcopolier, whose entire job was to manage these light cavalry troops. Think about that. They literally built the enemy's way of war right into their own command structure.
But adapting on the battlefield was just the start. If they were going to stick around, the Templars had to do a lot more than just fight differently. They had to build differently, and believe it or not, they even had to bank differently.
See, back in Europe, a castle was often just a simple, single tower, a donjon. Pretty basic stuff. But in the East, the Templars saw these incredible, far superior concentric castles from the Byzantines and Muslims. Think of the Citadel of Aleppo. So what did they do? They copied them. They started building these massive fortresses with multiple layers of walls, and they added clever little innovations they learned, like the bent entrance. This made it physically impossible for an enemy to get a straight shot at the gate with a battering ram. Genius.
Okay, and then there's the money. How do you protect pilgrims who are carrying their entire life savings across thousands of dangerous miles? The Templars didn't invent some brand new system from scratch. Nope, they took the existing Islamic Hawala system and basically institutionalized it on a massive scale. It was a brilliant move. A pilgrim could drop off their gold in Paris, get a piece of paper with a special code, travel light, and then cash it in when they got to Jerusalem. They basically created one of history's first international banking networks. And the model for it? It came directly from the East.
All right, so they've adapted their army and their buildings. But they were also fighting another war, an invisible one, against disease, against the heat, and against wounds that the doctors back home had no idea how to treat.
And there's this absolutely shocking account from an Arab chronicler, Usama ibn Munqidh, that just shows you how barbaric Western medicine was at the time. He describes watching a Frankish doctor treat a knight for a minor abscess on his leg. The doctor's solution? An axe. He amputates the leg, and the knight dies instantly. Compared to the advanced medical knowledge of the Islamic world, this was just butchery.
So what did the Templars do? You guessed it, they adapted. They learned from local, Eastern practices. Their own internal rules forced them to eat less meat and way more local foods, like lentils and olive oil.
They made washing your hands before meals mandatory. Think about how advanced that was for the time. They even sanitized their water, probably using local tricks. And the result? It's incredible. Templars often lived well into their 60s and even 70s, which was an absolutely astonishing lifespan for that era.
Okay, so as the Templars are soaking up all these military, architectural, and even biological ideas from the East, something really fascinating starts to happen. Those hard, clear lines between Christian and Muslim, between friend and enemy, they start to get really, really blurry.
And the proof is just incredible. That same chronicler who made fun of their doctors, Usama ibn Munqidh, tells this other story. He was visiting the Templar headquarters in Jerusalem, and they actually cleared out a little chapel so he could do his Muslim prayers facing Mecca. When some new guy, a European who just arrived, tried to stop him, his Templar host physically threw the man out and apologized to him. And get this, he calls them my friends. I mean, that shows a level of mutual respect and just pragmatism that completely shatters the simple story of a holy war.
But here's the great, tragic paradox of the Templars. The very things that made them so incredibly successful and powerful in the East, all that adaptation, it turned them into objects of deep suspicion and even fear back home in Europe. They had simply become too different, too foreign.
And you see this perfectly in their trials. All that cultural blending was twisted into accusations of heresy. The most famous charge, of course, was that they worshipped a demonic idol called Baphomet. But you know, a lot of historians now think that Baphomet was just a garbled, old French mispronunciation of Muhammad or Mohammed. Their familiarity with Islamic culture, their respect for it, was completely reframed as a secret conversion. They were accused of becoming the enemy.
And once that accusation stuck, their downfall was just shockingly fast. In 1291, the last Crusader stronghold in the Holy Land falls. Suddenly, the Templars' whole reason for existing is gone. Now they're just this ridiculously wealthy, powerful international organization with no war to fight. And that made them the perfect target for the King of France, Philip IV, who was deeply in debt to them. He launched this brutal campaign of arrests, torture, and propaganda, and eventually, he pressured the Pope to dissolve the entire order in 1312. And just like that, they were gone.
So that leaves us with this one big nagging question. Were the Templars really destroyed because they were corrupt heretics? Or was their real sin something much more complicated? Was it the tragic price they paid for becoming this incredible, successful hybrid, a fusion of East and West, that in the end didn't fit neatly or safely into either world?